Hello Sensuals, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas in advance, and since it's Christmas I thought I would do something very beautiful, or in my definition of beautiful. I want to tell you a story of our sexuality and our soul. Now they are intertwined. Actually, our soul is intertwined with everything about us, including our sexuality. But when we become aware of this intertwining, we become more conscious of our sexuality and the way we're developing, the way we're growing. First of all, what is sexuality? In the very core and raw and basic definition, it is the union between man and woman. Well, in a broader sense, it is the union between masculine and feminine. So sexuality, if you take it into its broader perspective, it is not just in the physical act, but it is in any union or intertwining or harmonizing of what is masculine and what is feminine. In ancient China, humanity received from many years ago this explanation in the terms of yin, feminine, and yang, masculine. Now, the union between yin and yang is in essence the union between the duality in us, as yin and yang do not refer just to the physical, but they are seemingly opposite forces that make everything living, everything that has consciousness, they're its constituents. So everything that has consciousness, we're talking about mineral, plant, animal, and human. Everything that exists in the universe has both yin, feminine energy or feminine force, as well as yang, masculine energy or masculine force. And sexuality is the union of these two. Now, the ancient Chinese used these dual forces in almost everything they did, in martial arts, in traditional medicine, in their very famous philosophy, the Taoist philosophy. So these precepts were widespread, and nowadays we have heard, even in the western part of the planet, we have heard of yin and yang, although we perhaps have never sat down to analyze them or to go into depth with these. As they defined these two driving forces, or seemingly opposite forces, the yin, the feminine, was also known as the mysterious or the hidden, the damp, the moist, the wet, fluid, emotional, free, as in not having a particular shape or form, while yang, the masculine, was the fiery, the dry, the seen or the revealed, the structured, and the logical part or aspect of everything, again, that has consciousness. Now, as human beings, we have these two parts, these two aspects within each and every one of us. And the entire Chinese philosophy is about integrating these two and uniting these two within ourselves, and obviously outside of ourselves, to reach our highest spiritual practice, and that is harmonizing ourselves. The majority of us don't really care or don't really know what the ancient Chinese said. So in Western culture, we gravitate more towards personal development or psychology. So enter psychology. In the 20th century, the psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung proposed to humanity two concepts, and that was the animus, the internal man, and anima, the internal woman. Now, you may have heard of Carl Gustav Jung. in relation to Sigmund Freud, as these two men influenced each other greatly in their work in the field of psychoanalysis and psychotherapy. Carl Gustav Jung knew intuitively that we were more than just our physical bodies and our physical instincts or needs. So we are more than just what is perceptible to the five senses. We are also made of energy, and we are also made of combining and seemingly opposite forces, which he named Animus and Anima. Now, his theory goes like this. While we are born in a physical body which can only take one shape, either man or woman, we have an ego or personality, which is in the majority of cases congruent to our physical body. So if I'm a woman, and I am one of those majority cases, my ego and my personality is that of a woman. But I also have a counterpart which is within me, an internal man or animus, which is my connection to the subconscious, or also my connection to spirit. If you're a man watching, for instance, then let's say 90% chances, although that's a huge number, is that, or are, that you are just like your body with a masculine or a male ego or personality, so you assumed that role, and you have a complementary aspect within yourself, which is your internal woman or anima, which is your connection to your subconscious and also to your spirit. The reason that Jung proposed these two aspects to humanity was to help us in our human, psychological, and also spiritual development. The general idea is this, that every union between man and woman happens first and foremost within us. So we need, in essence, to harmonize our ego with our internal man or internal woman. So we have to have this wedding happening inside of us. The two seemingly opposite aspects of ourselves need to come in harmony. His first proposal to do this was to actually become aware when our ego or our personality is at play, and when our animus or anima, so the connection to our subconscious, are at play in their turn. And the broadest or the most general indicator of this is when we fall in love, or when we develop a huge and very intense passion for somebody. That is our internal man, animus, or internal woman, anima, who's actually at play. Because when we fall in love so greatly and so deeply, so we have the tension of emotions and sexual drive together, that is the moment when we develop ourselves the fastest, the greatest, and it's the most intense growth process that we know of. So when we do this, when we find somebody whom we think is beautiful, sensual, soft, or strong, or determined, or kinky, or creative, or bold, or magnetic from any point of view, or any other qualities that we see in these people. So they're geniuses, they're very skilled at socializing, they're very good at generating businesses, they're very good at generating emotions in other people, they're artists, they are great leaders, political leaders, business leaders, social leaders, and so on. Whatever we see in those people that makes us fall head over heels for them, that is, in fact, our animus or our anima who's trying to actually draw our attention to something. So the idea is that our internal man or internal woman project onto others qualities that we inherently possess, but we may not be aware of them. So our internal man or woman needs to draw somebody from the outside who will portray those qualities so that they become very, very clear to us, so somebody else embodies them. Now, the projection can be so big, so your animus or anima may be wanting to attract your attention to these qualities that you have in yourself, but you don't manifest them, or you don't express them, or you haven't integrated them, that they will enhance these things in other people. And that is when actually you realize that you fall for somebody, but other people around you keep telling you, you know, this person is not so great. In those moments, you have either a chance to make that relationship or not. But the idea is that you become aware whether this is your personality and your human side, which is actually very compatible to somebody, or if this is your internal man or woman who's drawing your attention to something, so they're creating something on the outside so that you can develop. Another way in which Gustav Jung's proposal of Animus and Anima comes to help us develop ourselves is in situations of distress. Now, in the case of men, whenever somebody reproaches something to them, or whenever the situation is so complicated that they are exceeded in terms of intellect, in terms of reasoning, in terms of solutions that they can bring, or whenever there's a fight, a tension around, they can get hurt, or in other words, their internal woman can get hurt. And this is why we see, in some cases, men who become either quiet, this is one feminine reaction to distress. They can withdraw and they can avoid conflict. This is another feminine reaction in distress. Or they can become very emotional or very irrational, and they can seem these hysterical people that just are not making any sense. This is another feminine reaction in distress. The proposal here is that we become aware of what is going on with us and treat our internal woman as we would treat any woman on the outside. So we ask our internal woman what is wrong, what has hurt us, and what she needs to become peaceful again, or to get better. And this is in essence an internal discussion that every man has to have whenever he finds himself in one of those feminine reactions in distress. In the case of women, whenever we find ourselves in a situation that we become, let's say, too critical or too nagging, or we hold preaches, in essence, those are situations in which we've been hurt, and our internal man, so our animus, senses that our ego has been hurt, so he jumps to protect. And he does this with anything that comes at hand, especially in the case that we, as the woman, have not communicated to our man how we want to be helped. So that's why we see women who become nagging, who patronize, who give orders, who want to take control of everything. So they want to make everything right. Women who hold preaches, or women who bring grudges from the past, and they remember things which make sense, or which are also in the same kind of scenario which caused us to be in distress. Again, this is a man taking charge to protect his woman, but this is a man who has not been instructed what to do. So in this case, Jung proposes to women to become aware when they are acting out of their male energy, which is also, these are energies, or these are reactions of masculine energy in distress. So they're confronting, they're taking charge, they are fighting, they are controlling, they are ruling, they are disciplining. This is what masculine energy does in essence. But since we are women, Jung's proposal is that we treat the situation as we would treat it with any man. So if a man senses that a woman is hurt or needs help, then he needs instructions so that he can fulfill whatever needs to be fulfilled to the best. So in this case, we need to admit as women inside of us that we feel hurt, scared, or whatever, we are deceived or whatever else we're feeling, and we need to ask our internal man for help and for solutions, but we need to be very precise so that he knows how to act. Now when we do these things, which may seem pretty cliche, but it's only a cliche if you take the value of this out of it and you just don't put any thought into it. But if we do these things whenever we're, again, in distress, or whenever we fall in love, we become aware of what is going on and we act accordingly. This is the simple way that we can have our internal, let's say, wedding. So internal unification of our feminine and our masculine. Now, when we do that, when we are in this full harmony, we actually can ensure that we become harmonious in the relationships with others, and we become the best version of ourselves, and we put the best versions of ourselves out there. So we're living from a higher level. And what Jung also says is that throughout time, spirituality and sexuality have been disconnected somehow. So this was the case of religion. In ancient times, religious people believed that we were too focused on our sexuality and not focused enough in our spirituality, which might have been very true, but cutting them in the hopes that we would focus more towards spirituality, so cutting sexuality out as a sin and reserving it just for marriage, and even within the marriage just for procreation and period, reduced our instincts and our human needs, which we also need to, we need to fulfill them. So every fulfilled human being has to have a relationship, physically, emotionally, psychologically, but they also have to have an internal union or wedding or internal relationship of the man and or feminine and masculine, yin and yang, animus and anima. When we do these things, we are again fulfilling ourselves on all levels, and this is the highest spiritual or personal development practice that we can do. Unify ourselves and therefore grow, develop, and help others grow and develop just by simply putting our best version out there. So, since this is Christmas, and I do hope that you will take some time for yourself to reconnect with yourself, to sit with yourself, to feel yourself, I also want to encourage you to think about uniting yourself. So these two aspects of yourself, your internal wedding, so let's call it like that, your feminine side and your masculine side, and how you can take this with you in everyday life in any kind of situations. These were just two that I mentioned, but there could be more. And how you can use this harmonizing tools just to make you happier, in harmony, make you better, and help others become their better versions as well. This is how sexuality and our soul intertwine. And it's, again, the union, not just in our physical existence, but it's also the union within us, energetically speaking or spiritually speaking, the union that should take place, and we ought to welcome it, we ought to encourage it, and we ought to nourish it. So I hope that you have a very Merry Christmas, and very sensual one also. I would not be doing this if I would cut out sexuality. So enjoy this. I hope you like it. And if there's anything that is not clear, write me a question or two. I can still come back to this subject and I can try to make it as clear as possible. And below I will also put a link to a book where all the knowledge that Carl Gustav Jung had on Animus and Anima were united. This is a very old book, and we could certainly use it if we think it helps. So have a merry and sexy Christmas, and I'll see you next week.